Imperfect Heroes Podcast is a production of Little Hearts Academy, USA.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us for Imperfect Heroes, Insights into Parenting, the perfect podcast for imperfect parents, learning to find joy in their experience of raising children in an imperfect world. And I'm your host, DJ Stutz. Thank you. Welcome again to Imperfect Heroes. And today we have so much to talk about. It's so exciting. I have a fabulous guest. But before we get started, I just wanted to give you a plug for Roman is Bigger. This is my book that I wrote, and my illustrator, I love her. Her name is Nadia Kolpek, and she is from Ukraine. She did an awesome job on the pictures. She did such a great job. And we are currently working on our next book, but Roman is going to find out that he is going to be a big brother. He's not sure how he feels about that because, babies can stink and they are noisy and they take up all of mommy's time. And so I want you to keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, if you don't have it yet, order it now. So you can get it on Amazon. It is on Barnes & Noble's website, and it's even on Walmart's website as well. So there we go. All right, let's get going with our conversation. So today I have Christian Yordanov. There we are. I was practicing it and I still muffed it a little bit. Sorry, Christian. And it's fun because I look at Christian, and I have a son named Christian, and they're only a couple of years different in age. You look so much alike, and you just bring me joy looking at you. But Christian, you are currently actually in Portugal, but you have lived all over the world, and you've got a couple of kids of your own, and we are talking today. Oh, just one.
Well, I consider my dog my first child, to be perfectly honest.
Well, there you go. So, there's that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But you are doing a lot of work with nutrition and how that fits into our lives and the lives of children who are specifically dealing with autism. But the advice that you give, and what I really love hearing about you, is this advice works for basically all kids with ADHD or all kinds of kids that have neurodiversities. But even our typical kids, they need that good nutrition to help their brains grow, to help their bodies grow, their nervous systems to connect properly. And so why don't you talk to us for a little bit about what you do and what you have going on?
Thank you, DJ. It's an honor to be on your show. I love you. I love what you're doing. I love your energy. And I consider you a friend. And thank you for your kind words as well. What I do is I basically help people of all ages and stages either restore their health if they have a health challenge. And with a smaller subset of my clients, we work on optimizing health. And sometimes we do both. We restore the person's health, and then we look for ways to optimize it. And how I got started in this area was actually my first book that I published in 2020 was on autism. It's called Autism Wellbeing Plan, How to Get Your Child Healthy. And it's basically about 300 pages long. And in there, I detail a lot of the research into autism that shows that autistic children suffer from a myriad of health challenges or imbalances, nutrient deficiencies, gut dysbiosis, detoxification issues, heavy metals, and some slightly more complex challenges. And I present the challenges to the parents, and then I give them the tools to identify their child's particular set of challenges and how to address them with the help of their practitioner, ideally. So I talk about sleep improvement, diet, supplementation, lab testing. That's a big area that I kind of specialize in. Is when I work with anybody, be that a parent, child's health we want to improve, or an adult, we run some pre-advanced lab testing, and we don't just kind of stab in the dark and guess and do trial and error. We, going back to children, a lot of the kids with autism or the autistic kids, a lot of them have gut dysfunction of some sort. And when we do some more advanced testing, like stool testing, organic acids, urine testing, we very often find either yeast overgrowth like candida, certain bacterial dysbiosis or imbalances, low levels of the quote unquote beneficial bacteria. So that really helps us to kind of quickly zero in on what is the thing we want to optimize. And then we use, again, changes in the diet, certain supplements. And the beautiful part is, especially with children, with younger children, is how quickly they bounce back from the whatever setback you identify that they have. I'm actually working with some moms that their children don't have like a condition that's been diagnosed or anything, but they came to me with problems. And it's actually quite surprising how many kids nowadays of all neurotypical, on the spectrum, neurodiverse, whatever, how many children are actually having health issues. But what I find is when we work with, let's say, sometimes the mom and the child, I sign them up on one package. So we work on both, improving both of their health.
Oh,
What I
wow.
find is 2-3 months into it, we kind of stop talking about the child. I was actually talking to one mom a couple of days ago. We've probably been working together maybe 6-7 months. And I just realized we haven't talked about her son's health maybe in 3-4 months because everything is, we did the stool test, we did some other stuff, supplements, he's pooping well. That's a big issue, with kids not pooping and constipation and whatever else.
Right.
So he's pooping out. So we haven't even spoken about him in months. And I'm like, I'm like, every session, I'm like, oh, I meant to ask. And then but there's nothing to ask. There's nothing to do further. The child is now back on track, pooping like a champ. And so that goes back to how resilient kids are, and it's such a pleasure and honor to kind of be able to help folks restore our health, because I don't like the terms fixing. Obviously I can't use diagnose, cure. This complete no-go zone for non-qualified medical doctors. So I like to call it restore the health and then get on with your life. That's what I like to help people with.
I love that. And at least for me, with the big point. So a lot of times when I'm helping parents and I do the parent coaching thing, but you brought up pooping, and that is a big issue. And
Huge.
sometimes when kids are having temper tantrums and behavior issues, it's because something isn't working right in their body. And so they're uncomfortable, but they can't put their finger on it. They know they just don't feel right. And that's one of the things that I ask parents is, how are they doing with their pooping? Are we keeping track? And so I'm the data meister. I love to keep data on. Yeah. How many, how often are we having temper tantrums, and, how often are we eating properly, and so we keep track of a lot of things. And one of the things I have them keep track of is how often are they pooping and when are they pooping, and all of that kind of stuff. And in fact, that's one of the things that, especially as our kids get older, for me, older, that's like 5, but is when they're struggling with a tantrum, and I have a toolbox. And so some of the things that they can pull out if they're feeling upset and angry, they can pull out something, and it's a strategy to help them calm down. And one of the strategies is go into the bathroom and try to poop.
It's huge. It's huge. And
Yeah.
even in my book, I talk about some research. It's common sense for parents, but researchers like to dig into the details. And gut dysfunction in autistic kids is associated with self-injurious behavior, aggression to others, all the things that you can imagine, sleep issues, irritability, trouble concentrating. So the way I like to kind of frame it is for an adult is if you haven't pooped in like 2 days or 3 days, some of these kids, I'll tell you, there was a family I was working with earlier this year. Their child didn't poop at all on his own, so they had to use like a douche. There's another mom that she had to like do like a enema type douche, I think once or twice a week, until we started working together. And we're just discussing a week or two ago what a change it's been for her to stop having to worry about her child pooping regularly. It's not every day still, but it's natural. There's no pain associated, because when a child associates pain and discomfort with pooping, then they withhold. And I remember when I was getting trained on some of the lab testing back in 2018, circa 2019, we were shown a picture by one of the doctors where this was literally from the tip of your middle finger to your elbow size length of a stool that a child had passed. That's how long. And these parents that I was talking about earlier in the year, they
Oh
told me
my goodness.
one of the stools was long. It was thin, but it was over a foot long that the child passed at one point after an enema. So these can be very serious problems that we really take for granted when our kids are healthy and pooping well and all that stuff. So I really actually come to think of it, I love what you're talking about, having a toolbox. This is what one day I'm going to write a book about just general stuff I've learned about after having kids and all my research and working with parents. But I really think we have to have tools in our toolbox if something happens, like let's say child gets sick, instead of just reaching for the Tylenol or ibuprofen or whatever, or going to get an antibiotic prescription, which is in most cases unnecessary. We really need to have tools, or like if just trying to think of another issue, okay, simple example, if a child scrapes their, we have first aid, we have, if they look sick, what we take them to the doctor, but there's a lot of general things that can happen. There's no manual that told us if your child isn't pooping for 3 days in a row, try a glycerin suppository. Simple thing that we kind of stumbled upon with my wife, and that really worked for us once or twice. And then when I start working with a client, I just tell them, here's what I've tried as a parent, because I'm only a parent a couple of years. So I'm like throwing things that have worked for us, and they're like, oh, we tried that and that worked, and we never had that problem again. So it's an amazing journey.
It is an amazing journey. It really is. And I think too that, and I'll just bring this up quickly and we can move on to some other things, but poop. Who doesn't love talking about poop, right? But
I love it.
But if they're struggling and they're having trouble, and like you said, if pooping is painful and all of that, you're going to have a really hard time even potty training them, because they associate that with pain and they will hold it in. And so then it becomes a big ordeal. Before you're considering even if they're ready for potty training, are they pooping regularly? Because if they're not, you're going to have a harder time potty training them. And so what are they eating? Because there's a lot of things they can eat that can help with that. Keeping them regular, like you said, the glycerin suppositories, those kinds of things. Just get all your little ducks in a row before you start working on something like that. Potty training's huge. It's just huge. So you want to make sure that you've got all of that set up before you start trying. And potty training for number 2 is very different than potty training for number 1 as well. And so making sure that you understand the differences and the approaches. But yeah, just make sure that you're ready, your kid's ready, and their body is ready so that they can have a regular enough experience so that you can really get them into the swing of things. So let's talk about then foods. And even before we were getting ready to record today, we were talking about how important nutrition is, even in vitro. When you're pregnant, mommies and daddies can help a lot with this in making sure that you're not, let's go out to eat fast food every day or whatever, but making sure that you're supportive in good nutritional food while mom's pregnant. But making sure that you're eating things that are going to help develop their brains. Certain foods and stuff are going to help develop brain function and their nervous system and their muscular and their skeletal systems and stuff. Good nutrition starts right off the bat.
It's huge.
As soon as you find out you're pregnant.
Even before that, ideally.
Yeah.
Because even when you find out you're pregnant, and then, the first thing if you go to the doctor, they'll give you folic acid, which is obviously not the optimal form of folate to be taking, but it has prevented a lot of neurotube defects in the last however many decades it's been in use. But the thing is, by the time you realize you're pregnant through the test or whatever, usually it's too late for folic acids to prevent.
Really? Yeah.
If the neurotube defect was going to happen because of a folic acid deficiency, that happens more often than not before the couple finds out they're pregnant. And this was, by the way, I heard Dr. William Walsh, PhD. He's a very well-known biochemist. He's written an amazing book called Nutrient Power. And he's actually worked with lots of people with ADHD, autism, depression, even more serious things like schizophrenia. He's tested the blood chemistry, hair metals of violent offenders. And you know what? He found very similar imbalances between the violent criminals, schizophrenia, depression, a lot of the neuropsychiatric issues, and also ADHD. There's a few nutrients in the brain and the nervous system that, if they're imbalanced, can cause us issues, and how those issues manifest will depend. Here's where hereditary factors, genetics, here's where those things sort of guide which way it manifests, right? For example, I have fairly serious polymorphism in one of my genes that has been associated with miscarriage, atherosclerosis, depression, and quite a lot of different things. And we have all of those things that I just listed, we have those in my family, right? So that's a prime example of where a genetic predisposition can allow for, let's say, atherosclerosis, like my grandma, or these other things. But what you do about that defect, it's a genetic defect, or variation is probably the better term to use. What you do about that genetic polymorphism is nutritional strategies. So for example, I take creatine, I take lots of choline from liver and egg yolks and supplements. I take methyl B12, methylfolate from a high quality B vitamin. So there's always strategies to ameliorate any potential predisposition that could be genetic or hereditary. And what I think the most important thing for any parents listening right now is probably, because we don't have a lot of time, I want to pack in the most important things that we can do for our children and ourselves and our family.
Absolutely.
The number one thing, and this will be one of the main chapters in my upcoming book, is the number one thing we need to start doing, if we haven't already, which most of us haven't, it's just a fact, is start reducing the polyunsaturated fat content of our diets. Now, most families get a lot of this if you eat out a lot, if you eat in restaurants, if you order takeout. That's your biggest source of polyunsaturated fats. And when I say polyunsaturated fats, I'm talking about generally the omega-6 oils, so the quote-unquote heart-healthy oils, which are not at all heart-healthy. So, the soybean oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, all of these things really have permeated the food supply. So if you're eating out, if you're ordering takeout, if you're buying processed food often, your intake of these polyunsaturated fats is probably way too high for comfort. And I think that's the number one area where, with folks that I work with, is the first area that we really have to double down on improving. So reducing, not just against the seed oils when you cook at home. Okay, you can stop buying sunflower oil or soybean oil. You can start cooking with butter, coconut oil, for example, or beef tallow. But it's the insidiousness of these oils is really what we have to be I believe, quite militant about. Because if you know what I know, how they're linked with cancer, heart disease, atherosclerosis, even things like polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, Alzheimer's, dementia. If you kind of start digging into the research, it's absolutely terrifying. So I think the number one thing we can do for our kids and ourselves and our long-term health is really start thinking, how can we avoid these? If you have to eat out, I think there's always strategies to reduce the burden of these seed oils. So when we go to the restaurant, which is very rarely, I always tell the person serving us, say, look, my kid is going to sample all the food that we order. She is severely allergic to seed oils like sunflower. Usually here it's sunflower. In the US, it's often also soybean oil. So I just say she's severely allergic to sunflower oil. And if anything, so much as stuck. I'm not this pedantic about it. I'm not an asshole about it, But I'm like, you need to use butter, ideally, or olive oil with all the oils and all the fats that you cook the food in. And they're usually, of course, because people are used to catering for people with intolerances and allergies. So if you do that and you steer clear from foods that are like deep fried, I think that is the first and probably most important step we all need to start taking. And I know most people aren't doing it because we know what people eat in the USA. We know that the intake of seed oils has gone up tremendously since about 1911, when Procter and Gamble came out with Crisco, and the rise
My
in
mom
all
used to cook with Crisco all the time. That was the
my
thing.
grandma my grandma would drizzle sunflower oil on everything, salads. to make pastries. One of my favorite foods growing up was potato fries, French fries in sunflower oil. I only got the memo personally about 6 years ago or so. And since then, we've been pretty good. Not always. For example, tortilla chips, one of my guilty pleasures. I stopped now, but I realized at one point like a 3.5 ounce packet of tortilla chips can have 20 to 30 grams of some oil, soybean, corn, or sunflower oil. In my neck of the woods, it's sunflower oil. And just that alone, one little packet of that is way, way, way more polyunsaturated fat than a person should be getting in a day. And this in the USA, some people are easily getting double that, 60, 70 grams a day easily. And the worst offenders, quote unquote, the people that only have the opportunity to eat out or don't cook or travel a lot, those people could be getting even more. And the disease, Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, and the four biggest sort of killers, these have gone up in tandem with the increase in seed oil consumption. It's not with sugar, it's not with grain, it's not with a lot of other things that are being used as convenient scapegoats to blame the chronic disease crisis on. Diabetes, etc., etc. It's the seed oils that have the most close correlation to the increase in diseases. So I think this is one area. Here's a joke. I tell some of my clients, I tell them, I don't care if you go to your local bar, do shots of Jägermeister, and do lines of Coke off of a dirty toilet seat, okay? Just stay the heck away from these seed oils or these omega-6s, the peanut butter. So even the nuts and the seeds I'm not a fan of, to be perfectly honest. I really don't think nuts were designed to be eaten daily, or grains or beans. These were foods that were not designed to be eaten on a daily basis. Nuts, if you look at it seasonally, they come around usually the late summer, and it's a season. They're hard to access. You gotta climb trees. It's dangerous. So you can eat nuts once in a while. It should be more of a little bit of like a garnish in your salad, pine nuts or whatever. I don't think these should be eaten every day, because I'll tell you, it actually turns out that squirrels and certain hibernating animals, they gorge on nuts to help them enter into the hibernation state. The polyunsaturated fats, the omega-6s in the nuts, they lower your metabolism. They inhibit your thyroid hormone, and they help you enter into a state of known as torpor. So these things are not really good for you in large doses. So this is another area where I'm kind of, especially when I'm working with autistic kids, I tell the parents, look, like number one is we have to get the polyunsaturated fats out of the diet. And ideally, when parents come to work with me, they're usually ready for these ostensibly drastic measures, like removing all of the grains from the diet except maybe organic white rice. But I honestly don't believe removing grains from your diet, especially if you have a health issue, like a gut problem or whatever, I don't think that's an extreme measure. I really think when you think about it, grains, anything that's a seed, nuts, seeds, beans, legumes, pulses, cereals, these things are seeds. These are the plant's babies. And as it turns out, people can go on PubMed. If they don't believe me, you can research this. The seeds contain a lot of toxins that our ancestors used to cleverly inactivate using fermentation, soaking, leavening. And they used to use a number of different techniques to inactivate a lot of these anti-nutrients like enzyme inhibitors, phytates. A lot of them can't be fully activated. Some of them can be destroyed by pressure cooking and so on. But there's things that bind minerals in the gut. So like calcium, magnesium, certain things like zinc, iron, they attach to them in the gut, like oxalates and phytic acid. They're two examples. They attach in the gut. So we poop them out instead of absorbing them. So there's a lot of issues with eating seeds, nuts, all these things that I mentioned, beans. First of all, because industrial food processing, they don't care about ancestral methods and how healthy a product is. They care about the bottom line. They care about getting something cheaply to market and then spending a bunch of money marketing it so they can move product. So they don't do the things that we used to do back in the day. If you buy some beans, let's say, or lentils and you sprout them, and you put those in your salad, that's one thing. If you make your own sourdough bread at home, that's a whole separate thing. But if we're buying quickly produced, especially all the grains, knowing how many of them are GMO, how many of them are the non-organic ones are laden with herbicides like glyphosate, pesticides, and then obviously the whole processing pipeline that extracts or strips a lot of nutrition minerals out of these things. So then they have to be fortified with synthetic vitamins, minerals, and so on. So I think the first port of call for me for like really, and I'm coming from the perspective of longevity. What are the things that we can do that will enhance our longevity long term? Is removing anything that's a seed from the diet for the most part. I have pizza once in a while. I buy bread once in a while. We're not going to turn into orthorexics here, but I'm talking about what are we eating on a daily basis. And personally, I know there's a lot of people now that are on the plant-based movement, and I've done vegan for a year and a half of my life, or plant-based, I should say. I've done keto, I've done carnivore, I've done all the diets. And after all the research I've done, after all the experimentation, I honestly believe we are designed to be omnivores and we need everything. We need, not that we need meat, but we need some sort of animal nutrients. If you don't like to support factory feedlot meat production, support regenerative agriculture, those farmers, those small businesses. If you don't want to support death to put food on your table, eat eggs, eat cheese, take milk. I really think children need a ton of these things like milk, cheese, animal products. I just do not in any way, shape or form think a fully plant-based diet can support a growing child, much less a fully grown adult with like a very, let's say a child might need 800 1,000 calories, but someone my size maybe needs 3,000 calories. I don't think it's possible to support either of those persons with a plant-based diet long term, unless you're taking a lot of supplementation. That's kind of my perspective. I know it's some points are a little bit controversial, but this is coming from thousands and thousands of hours of research and what I've seen what works for people. I have some clients, some ladies in their kind of early 30s that ruined their health with plant-based diets, like completely ruined their health.
Wow.
And it's a big struggle. Even at that age when they're still relatively young, it's a big struggle to get it back.
Yeah, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Let's talk for a little second because we're getting close to time. So you mentioned some of those things about they're easy to vilify, kind of as like the sugars and all of that, and how that affects kids. And I don't care what time of year it is, there's always an excuse for sugar.
Yeah.
You know, we have Halloween, Valentine's Day, and all summer long. That was a fun time for me, but we ate candy all summer long. Yeah, and so let's talk for a minute about sugar and where you are on that.
Yeah, honestly, my stance has really changed this year on sugar. I've done a lot more research, and to be completely honest with you, DJ, I think as parents, sugar is the least of our problems right now. The least of our problems. I already mentioned what I think are bigger problems. So too many nuts, grains with every meal or almost every meal or every day, and most especially the seed oils. I think these are the biggest problems, and the toxins in the environment, the plastics, air pollution, processed foods, and there's a list longer than my arm, your arm, and everybody's listening here arm. But to answer your question, sugar, I wouldn't be using processed sugar per se. I wouldn't be going out of my way to add it into our diet, but in its natural forms, honey, I absolutely love honey. I've probably eaten maybe it could be close to 10 to 12 ounces of honey today, just myself.
Wow.
Yeah. So love honey. My daughter loves honey. Fresh orange juice. So fruit. I think fruit, kids can eat as much as they want. I find, at least with my daughter, we are lucky that she's had very little processed crap, candy, and stuff like that. So she has really good satiety mechanisms. So I will give her a big honking spoon of honey, and then I'll try for a second one. I can see she hasn't eaten enough carbohydrates that morning or that evening or that day. She will refuse more. It's not like you have a lick of honey and suddenly all, like they say in the mainstream, the problem with sugar is we overeat and da da da. No, in fact, it's actually the seed oils in our food that hijack our satiety mechanisms. For example, tortilla chips or Doritos or something, you're getting a lot of calories, carbs, and fat at the same time, which is a bad combination. But there's no other nutrition, minerals, vitamins for your body to get the satiety mechanism sort of triggered. It's like, oh, I had a bunch of nutrients here. Now it's time to digest and send it out to the body. So the seed oils being added to the food are a real sort of spanner in the works. If you give a child a piece of fruit or two, usually they won't overeat these things. Maple syrup, it's too strong to want to drink the whole bottle. You just feel sick. So I think if we can encapsulate it in one or two sentences, is sugar in its natural form is not just benign, but it's what our body, our brain prefers to oxidize for energy. An adult brain needs about 4 ounces or 120 grams of sugar in one day in the course of 24 hours. That's about 5 grams of sugar per hour. We need that. If you take that away, the stress hormones have to go up because the cortisol can cause the liver to start creating sugar from other things. But to do that, we start breaking down the body. So I really think children do need a lot of carbohydrates in their diet to support because their metabolism is very high. So we need to be supporting that. But because the metabolism is very high, we also need to be adding all the other things they need. So the fats, the protein, the vitamins, and the minerals. And it's incredibly important to give them nutrient dense foods like milk, egg yolks, especially liver, if they can eat it. If you can teach your child to eat liver, organic, grass fed, ideally. You don't like liver, or have you had issues with adding liver? You don't like. It's my number one thing I work with on that side of things. I tell them once we've removed the bad stuff from the diet, we have to add good stuff. And if you can't eat liver once or twice a week, egg yolks have a lot of the same nutrients. But I tell you, my daughter, maybe since about 6 or 7 months of age, she's been chowing down on the chicken liver. Organic, very cheap. And now she's starting to lose the taste for it and meat in general. But it was one of the things that really almost brought a tear to my eye to see her.
Yeah.
She would say, more, more, more. Because it's got, liver has every nutrient you can imagine and all the nutrients that we don't even know exist or are essential for human, So if you can figure out how to get that into the diet, it's nature's multivitamin. So that's another thing I had to crowbar in there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, coming close to the end of our time, but there's so much more for you to share, and I can tell you've got so much more to offer to parents. If our parents want to learn more about you and get in touch with you, where would they go?
My website is christianyordanov.com, so just my name. You can put that into Google or any other search engine, everything comes up. And for a free initial call with folks that want to talk to me, get to know me a bit better and give me an idea of where they are, if they need help with any aspect of their health, their family's health, and how I can help. Always love to talk to people. And there's links there to my book and my upcoming book in a couple of months. Probably by the time this is released, it will be released.
Yeah.
Which is, it's more for adults. I am tentatively thinking of calling the book How to Actually Live Longer, because there's a lot of bad information out there.
Yeah, there is.
That will probably be on the website by the time folks see this.
Yeah, that's true. For those of you listening or watching, so we recorded this in December, so hence the earrings. You'll see my little Christmas tree earrings. So
Nice.
Anyway, yeah. So Christian, I always end my episodes with the same question for all my guests. And so we know that there are no perfect parents, never have been. But we do know some parents are more successful than others. So how would you describe a successful parent?
I think the successful parent has the incredible superpower to not allow their child to wind them up. To remember it's just a baby, it's just a child, it's just my kid, so they don't get pushed over the edge and snap and shout or whatever. I think if you can do that, I'm not saying I do that all the time. So, like today, my wife was rushing to get to work, and I came down, and it was all a big sort of thing. And then my daughter had her shoes on. She's like, "Let's go and play with the dog outside." My wife forgot to tell me that she hadn't put a diaper on her, and I didn't notice because it's cold. She has her pants on, and she likes to let her have diaper-free time. And I saw her poop when we were outside, but I didn't know. And then when I saw the disaster, I threw those pants out. I just put them in like a plastic bag, tied it, put it in the bin, and I said, no, I'm writing off those baby pants. There was poop on the floor. I had to wipe it off my shoe. I stepped in it. It was my hands. So then I had to shower her. So there was periods of time where my cortisol was going up because I hadn't eaten enough food or because I was working on the book. But she, for whatever reason, she saw the poop on her legs. It had dried by that time. So she saw she didn't want to be in that situation and she had to cooperate. So even though she's like 2 years old, she cooperated. We got in the shower, no issues there, cleaned her right up, and everything was dandy. And then off for her nap. But I do notice other times I'm kind of almost about to kind of like raise my voice. And I think if you can not do that, however, whatever way you can do that, take a deep breath, whatever way, if you can do that, I think that's a great gift to give to our children for them to not see us in that state.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love your story. Been there.
I'm sure you've been there countless times.
Oh my. Well, and then too, I even had kindergarten kids.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And it's so much smellier when it's not your kid's poop. And if
Oh,
it's on your
isn't
hands
it?
and it's somebody else's kid, I'm like, oh my God, radioactive poop. I think I have to amputate this arm.
So true. So
Yeah.
true. Oh my
Amputated.
gosh, I can totally relate. Yeah, all there. Been there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, I just love it. And you're right, man. The parents who are able to control themselves and control their own emotions are setting the right example. Their kids are going to watch that and see that, and then they're going to be better at imitating what they see around them. And so what great advice. What great advice. Well,
By the
so
way,
everybody.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go
I'm sorry,
ahead.
DJ.
No.
I wish I could follow my advice more, but my daughter, it's the cutest thing in the world. But my daughter now, our dog's name is Kyla. So she will shout after her because we're out and I'm trying to get her back. She's like, Kyla, come on, come on. Because I tell her, come on, come on, you know. So now the other day she was eating her rice and she couldn't get it on the spoon. She's like, come on, come on. Thing ever, you know. And then my wife was away for a few days, so we're in the car to pick her up, and she's in the back seat. She's like, "Mama, come on!" So I hope I start practicing what I preach and calm the heck down myself because yeah. We don't want to set that example.
No, you don't. And be careful of the words you say too. We've had that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, honey, don't say that word. Oh, you do. Oh,
Every
okay.
day.
I got to work on that. Yeah. Well, everybody, if you enjoyed what you heard in today's episode, I hope you'll let us know by following the podcast and leaving us a rating and review. 5 stars is the appropriate number of stars. And be sure and tell a friend. Then listen together and enjoy talking about our episodes. So until next week, let's find joy in parenting. Bye, everybody.